You can't do that on Salesforce. Dun, 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 dun. Hi, I'm Tom. You like the theme song? I made that up myself. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope I can remember it for the future. Welcome to a special edition of You Can't Do That on Salesforce. I want to tell you all that flow transforms are rad. And they are rad because they make a whole lot of less of a mess in your flows than the way you used to do stuff. And you might not realize what they're capable of because it's kind of a new feature. Still in beta, seems to be working. So let's check it out. And I'm going to come up with a simple scenario that we can take a look at and understand how this thing works and why it's better and why it results in less clutter in your Salesforce org. So let's check it out. Here we are. This is an example, simple story to tell here. Let's pretend that we are a business and we have accounts, and those accounts have some kind of product of ours that requires an annual renewal. And as a motorcycle drives by, as an organization, we use opportunities to manage those renewals. And every year, at the end of the year, we need to go pursue those renewals to make sure that our customers want to keep using whatever product it is that we have. So that means that we're going to need to pull our accounts, loop through those accounts, create those opportunities that match each account, and save them, and then assign them out to to the sales reps that are going to do stuff to go get the renewals. Good story? Good story. There's two ways to do this. There's the old way. There's the new way. The new way, surprise, is with transforms. The old way is what most of us are probably accustomed to when we're building flows that involve having to work with collections. The transform function in flow is awesome when it comes to working with collections. And it's going to eliminate your need to loop. It's going to eliminate your need to iterate. It's going to eliminate your need to add things to a collection after you initialize a record that should be part of that collection. Let's talk it through. In our little contrived example here, it's renewal time. Maybe this is a screen flow. Maybe this is a scheduled flow to run once a year or whatever. However it kicks off, it's kicking off. It's going to go get the accounts that we want to issue renewals for. So that's pretty standard. We're just using the get records function there. And then in normal world, you wouldn't need this decision, but I wanted to have two examples of how we do this the old way and how we do this the new way. So the old way, we would have a lot of moving parts, really. First, we need an opportunities collection to put these things into. So I'm going to have a variable that is a collection variable. It's a record collection pointing at the opportunities. I called it new opportunities collection. Seems like a useful name. The other thing we're going to need is something to act upon in the loop, which I like to call these iterators. So you might call them something else, but my new opportunity iterator variable is what I'm going to use to initialize each of these records that ultimately end up in the collection. And then in my case, I also have a formula because I want to name these opportunities a certain way. So as I'm looping over my accounts, I'm going to use that ultimately as the name of the opportunity with space renewal at the end of it. You probably would do something more sophisticated, but again, this just kind of gets the point across. So then what do? Well, we have our accounts, and this is the old way of doing this. We would grab our accounts, we would loop over those accounts, and within each loop, we would iterate, and we would initialize our iterator record, which is what I've got here. Keeping it simple again, just for an example, we need to set the account ID on the opportunity, and we're going to set the name. We're going to use that formula that we created as one of our resources. After we create the iterated record, we have to add it to the collection. So we're going to take this extra step, put it in the collection. I suppose you could do this in the same assignment, but I like to keep field setting in one assignment action, and then adding to the collection that it belongs to in a separate action. Just makes it easier to read. Once that's done, we've got our collection of opportunities filled, and then we can insert those opportunities. So there you have it. Now what's in motion? A loop, an iterator, a collection to fill, a formula, all resources off to the side. We're only not going to need any of that when we do this the transform way. So let's flip over to the other side of our decisions here. The right-hand side is using the new transform function in Flow. We're going to do all of this in one step, essentially, minus our insert of the records. We're going to use the standard function for that. But let's look at the transform and what's going on here. Transforms are all about having a source and having a target, and mapping between the source and the target. Now, you can map collections from the source to the target, and it's actually iterating under the hood when it's time to run and map the source fields to the destination fields, creating those records along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and just rebuild this so we can see how it all comes together, but we're going to build a collection of opportunities through the transform action. So if I was starting fresh, it would look like this. My source, in fact, we'll go all the way back. My source, I can pick any collection that I want to work against. I'll work against my accounts that I got from Get Accounts. It's going to read that object, it knows what that object is. It's going to give me all the fields back on that object. Then I'm going to go to the target side. What do you want to select? We can choose records. We can also choose Apex defined types, which we won't get into today, but that's superpower kind of stuff because you can design any kind of data structure you want without having to rely on a Salesforce object. Really great for API calls and things like that. We're just going to stick with record for right now. We want this box checked because we want to work against a collection. We want to build a collection of opportunities essentially when we're done here. And it actually already filled that in for me. You could, if that wasn't filled out, you would pick your object just like you do anywhere else in Flow. Okay, good. Then it knows the object, so it pulls all the fields for the opportunity. And now it's just a mapping exercise, right? So we've replaced the loop by using the transform and telling it that we want a collection to end up with. It knows that there's a collection on the left, there's a collection on the right, so we're going to end up with a collection. We're about to replace the assignment step because I'm going to be able to go in and say, the opportunity expects an account ID. So let's go grab the ID of the account on the left, click the little button, come over to the right, and now that's mapped. So for every account that's in my collection, I'm going to get an opportunity that has the account IDs populated. Let's go one step further. Let's replace that formula that we had to create one-off to adjust the name of the opportunity that we want. So I'm going to map the name of the account over to the opportunity. Now, if I just leave it as this, I'm going to get opportunities that have the same name as my accounts. Extra sauce, if you highlight the field that you just mapped, you get these two options. You get a delete button or a delete button. You can obviously delete the mapping. This formula is what we really want. This is going to replace that formula that we did one-off on the other side. Now, you may, if you're familiar with formulas, like the one that we made, you would see you can run them in the context of a loop because you can use the current item variable that comes along with every loop. Similar concept with a transform is you get this syntax, the each item, and then you get the field that you're operating against. So by default, it recognized that we were mapping the name. Let's take this a step further. and we'll put that renewal value in there. Check the syntax, all good. Close that up. Let's go back to our transform here. So now what have we done? We've eliminated the need for a loop. We've eliminated the need for assignment, both the field and the add to the collection. And we've eliminated the need for a function one-off because we can now do those in line. And you can do those as many times as you want across as many fields as you've mapped. Go crazy. The last thing that we get, because this is, because we're transforming and ending up with a collection, I now have a data source in my flow that I can do collection-y stuff with. And in our case, I can now use that transform to insert records and not have to, move records from the transform into a collection. It is a collection unto itself. So again, we have taken the old way of looping over records, needing an iterator, needing a new collection, assigning values to the iterator, adding the iterator to the collection, possibly having some formulas, all one-off. You can see all of our resources on the left-hand side here. Most of them are for the old way of doing this. I got my formula, I've got my iterator, I've got my collection. All those are there. It doesn't sound like a ton, but readability-wise, I would sure love to come in and just look at transforms than have to interpret what's going on in these loops. It's really a nice self-contained UX, puts everything in one place. It's intelligible. I can understand that, I'm mapping from here to here, and there's a function in between that does stuff. I don't have to go out of my assignment into my formula, out of my iterator into my collection. It's all here in the transform. So transforms are rad. I like the right-hand column. I hope the rest of you do too. We're saving a couple of steps. It's much more intelligible when we look at it, and there's probably plenty of downstream things that you could do with this too. You could have a transform after a transform. You can use whatever the output of your first transform is can become the input for another transform. So go crazy, experiment with the transforms. One of the best new features of Winter 24. The other one that I love is all the HTTP callout stuff, which I did a presentation at Northeast Stream a couple weeks ago. And transforms sort of ended up in that presentation. I don't think I did them justice during that presentation, so I wanted to bring them here to talk about them specifically. So I'm Tom. You can't do that on Salesforce, but actually you can. See you next time.